Bench mounted brake lathe. Well, I'm going to go over a demonstration, show you guys how to machine brake rotors, and we probably won't have time to show you how to machine a drum, but I'll at least get it set up on here and show you kind of how it works. There's a lot of similarities between machining brake rotors and drums. First thing we need to take a look at is, once again, we have two different types of brake rotors, and they are hubbed and hubless. Yeah. Most of the steps for using this machine are going to be the exact same regardless of whether it's a hubbed or hubless rotor. The only difference is how you physically set the rotor up on the machine. Okay? We have several different size adapters. Okay? Really large, and then it goes down to smaller sizes. And we have to use these adapters on hubless rotors. Okay, these adapters are what we're going to sandwich the rotor between. If you take a look on the inside, you see that there's a groove on the inside of the adapter. And that is for this spring. So the first thing we want to do when we have our hubless rotor is find an adapter that fits inside the hat of the rotor, which this one doesn't. It's a little bit too big. That one does. We want to use as large a one as possible. Okay? So this is the largest one that we can use and still go inside the hat of the rotor. We're going to put it on here. We're going to put it here so the groove is facing out. Now before we machine this rotor, we first have to do what? What should we always do to the brake rotor before we machine it? Inspect it. Inspect is a good idea, sure. We are going to clean it, but that's not the first step.
Check its thickness?
Check its thickness. Measure it. Yeah, put a micrometer on here and measure the thickness of it. We want to make sure that it is not at the minimum refinish specification. If it's at the minimum refinish specification, what does that mean?
Throw it away. Throw it away.
No, if it's at the minimum refinish, can it still be used?
Yes.
Yes, but it can't be refinished. If this is the discard thickness, then we have to throw it away. Okay, so we've measured this. This is above the minimum refinish. It's above discard. But before we put it on here, we do want to take a piece of sandpaper and clean the rust off of both sides of the hat of the brake rotor. We're not trying to get it clean enough to eat. We're just trying to knock the high spots down. Because like I said, it is going to be sandwiched. And if you leave a high spot on here, it won't be sandwiched correctly and can actually tilt off to the side. Next thing, we need to put the spring in the groove. Once we have the spring in the groove, then we need to select the right centering cone. We have two different types of centering cones. One of them has just a single taper on it. The other one has two tapers on it. The single taper is for hubless brake rotors. The double taper is for brake rotors that have hubs. And there are several different sizes. All of these adapters should be stored up on here. I have them down here, so it makes it a little bit easier for you guys to see. We need to find our centering cone that fits inside the hole of the hat of the rotor from the back side. And that one kind of fits, but it doesn't really go all the way through. If we had to use this, we could. Ideally, we want one that goes through a little bit more than that. About halfway would be perfect. This is just a little bit more than halfway. Okay, but this one will work better than the other one. And then all the brake rotors and all the drums that we mount on this machine, we're going to put it on the machine just like we're mounting it on the vehicle. Once we have that on there, then we take our other adapter. The grooves always face each other. Remember, the other groove is facing this way. This groove faces the other groove. And then we have spacers that we can put on there. And the nut. Now, this nut is left-hand thread, which means instead of being righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, it's the opposite. And their nut will go on two different ways. One side, the threads don't come all the way up to the end. The other side, the threads do come all the way up to the end. The reason for this is for spacing. If, let's say that my adapter came on here and my spacers came out to there to where there's, half a dozen threads showing. One way I can't put it on there because it won't reach the threads, but I can turn it around the other way and install it, I think. And I'd be able to install it and tighten it down. Okay, so it's one or two, it'll go on one of two ways. All right, once you thread it onto here, tighten it down with a wrench. You don't need a lot of force. All you need to tighten it down is just enough so that you can't spin the rotor independently of the spindle. Okay? And then we also need to put on what's called a silencer band. And this is a rubber band that has lead in it, and it goes around the outside of the brake rotor. But what that does is that reduces vibration in the rotor when we're machining it. It is going to want to set up vibration. If we don't have one of these on there, the rotor can actually vibrate back and forth and cause the cutting bits to dig into it deeper, cut deeper. And you'll get high and low spots on it. And it'll damage the rotor and can ruin it. All right, so we have it set up. The next thing that we need to do is get our cutting head on here and get it set up. There are two different types of cutting heads. There's a single, which is used for machining brake drums, and then the double. And this we're going to use for machining brake rotors. There's two cutting bits on it. When you're installing this on here, there's a lot of leeway. You can move this back and forth. The further you have it out, the more apt it is to develop a vibration. So you can keep it as close to being back in as possible. Okay, it doesn't always work that way though. There are two cutting bits on this. They're triangular. They're held in by just a real small regular screw. If the bit, or if the surface gets really rough, your cut gets really rough, the bit probably needs to be changed. And if we just remove the screw, it's just a triangular bit. And that's actually what cuts the metal. If you do need to change it, you can take it out and just index it, which means take it, change it to another side, put the screw back into it. You can actually do that 6 times. So you can remove it, change it, and then you can flip it over. You can turn it upside down, or the other side up, and then put it on there. And then you can also switch them from left to right, although they don't last as long when you switch them from left to right. So you can actually get 12 cutting surfaces out of this one tool. And when you're tightening these down, you do not have to go. It's a very, very small screw. You can break it. Just tighten it down enough just till it just barely holds it.